Any weight loss program is going to cause muscle loss, losing more fat, and you are losing less muscle mass. As humans, we need to be eating 6 small meals a day. Like, what a load of bullshit. That's why the title of my book, Fast, Feast, and Flourish. It's not just an aspect of enough protein to counter the fasting window, but it's also just enough calories, enough nutrients has to counter the fasting windows. So let's just say the difficulty level of doing a flow fast is 10 out of 10. GLP-1 alone would probably make it like a 7, and then AOD takes it from that 6 to 8 to like 3 to 6. AOD mobilizes body fat. What's the stressor from long fasting? The inability to mobilize body fat.
74% of Americans are overweight or obese, or one of the reasons at least is because of dietary intake.
I really think it's insulin resistance. GLP-1s will give you an instantaneous reduction in insulin resistance and therefore an instantaneous reduction in food chatter. Well, so does flow.
How the hell can I do that? Abstain from eating food for 24 hours.
I just want to talk a little bit.
I've been really excited to jump right into this because the questions have almost been overwhelming regarding peptides, fasting, the protocol, hearing about how to put it all together, making it mix and match, and the scientific benefits that go into the whole thing far beyond just general weight loss. With your personal experience, just starting from the beginning, what really was the first taste of fasting that you experienced that turned you onto it being a viable option and solution?
Yeah, it was way back after I'd lost my weight. So I lost 100 pounds when I was 16 years old, and this was well before fasting, so over 20 years ago. And at that time, this was counting calories, counting macros, cardio in the morning, weight training in the afternoon. And there was no fasting at all. And so, and really, the fitness industry at that time was, you got to eat protein every 3 hours. Like, your body just, this crazy intelligent design called the body can't store amino acids for more than a couple hours. Unfortunately, after I lost my 100 pounds, I couldn't keep the weight off. It was unfortunate. Every year, for a couple of years, I would like lose and regain about 50 pounds, half or so of the weight, because I'd freak out once I got closer to 40, 50, and then I get real serious again and get all, into all the stuff. And then I did that basically for every summer. Then I remember when I first learned about intermittent fasting, which if I ever really think about it, I don't know if it was, honestly, it was the lean gains, the dude, Martin Brickham, which, by the way, he's still active right now. And he's like doing things with his grip strength. And he's a cool dude. He's still at it. Yeah. But, and I remember wrestling with the concept for like a year because it's so contradictory to what we're doing, like skipping meals. When I finally tried it, I was blown away. I achieved not stability, like that wasn't it with intermittent fasting. This was just skipping breakfast. I started eating at lunch. But what I noticed was probably like 20 pounds at that point I was gaining and losing as opposed to 50. Mm-hmm. Huge difference. So then naturally I started like, well, what about prolonged fasting? If intermittent fasting is good. And, there was still today, there's no structure, which is why I created the FLOA Protocol. But back then there was for sure no structure on long fasting. You've heard of people doing 7-day water fasts and 5 days and all this, but like using it for weight loss, like that was different. Mm-hmm. And so I started playing around with different fasts, and I had success with longer ones, although, it gets really, really challenging. Mm-hmm. And so I was trying to look at how can I make it sustainable? How can I do it often? Monthly didn't seem often enough. So I think weekly made most sense. I mean, what's the longest an individual can fast weekly? And just kind of playing around with different ranges, 36 hours, 48, and it seemed like 48 was the magic bullet for me. I remember that year when I finally lost weight, my weight at that point doing that. Mm-hmm. Then I was like, whoa, like I'm leaner and with much less effort. So then I start decreasing my fasting window, playing around with the maintenance side of it. And that's kind of where I came up with the FLOA lifestyle, which is a long 48-hour fast every 3 to 5 weeks, give or take, depending upon the length. But it was really that trial and error. And then, you fast forward, I become a clinician working with functional medicine and helping patients achieve higher levels of health, not just in the weight loss space, but overall, like GI issues, autoimmune issues. Mm-hmm. And I just really had a lot of fun incorporating fasting because patients would be like, wait, do you want to do what? And I explained to them, like, look, this is like a really unconventional thing. Like, let's try it. Not everybody wanted to do it, but the patients that were like, all right, doc, if you think it's going to help, and, it radically better clinical improvements. And, with functional medicine, we're doing stool testing. We're doing comprehensive blood analysis. So really looking at the big picture. And yeah, not just losing weight was easier, but their health markers in so many categories got better. So I've been convinced that this long fasting is the secret ticket to lasting weight loss and optimal health. And that's why, we came up with the name FLOA Protocol, pronounced flow, but spelled FLOA. And just to be clear, a lot of people are calling it FLOA now. We might have to change it to FLOA now, but yeah, FLOA Protocol is really what I figured out is the most structured, it's the most aggressive way and the most fasting you can do really on a weekly basis to get the benefits and not get all the I would say risks, but all the downside. The downside, like the destruction of your metabolism and the weight loss plateau and all that.
Okay. Now that's, there's it's not a problem, but it's an issue when most people hear it. It's a slap in the face, kind of a shock to hear 48-hour fasting. And you mentioned the fitness industry. There's a lot of people out here that they think, one, I'm going to catabolize muscle. I'm going to go too long without intaking any food. My body is going to use my muscle as energy. And as I lose weight, I'm going to become significantly weaker and I'm going to lower my metabolism.
Right.
That's fear number one. Fear number two is, how the hell could I even make it through 48 hours, right? And finally, what I get for fear number three is, how the hell is this healthy and how the hell is this sustainable? I know that's a lot, but can you address that a little bit?
Yeah, which one do you want to talk about first?
Catabolization of muscle, the loss of muscle mass.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. That's a good one because especially you've seen this the last couple of years, like the work of Dr. Gabriel Leon and just a lot of these key opinion leaders in the anti-aging space. Really, we're starting to understand the importance of muscle mass for longevity, for metabolic health, like insane importance. But then when I start seeing crazy things like you need to start your day with a nice protein-rich breakfast, I'm like, whoa. Now all of a sudden intermittent fasting just is no longer good? No, that's not the case. And so, but why are they seeing studies that showed people that ate a nice protein-rich breakfast versus not are better results? Well, that's when you get into the complexity of studies and what you're comparing it to. With the sake of intermittent fasting, I guess with this renowned appreciation for muscle, we have to now clarify that fasting has to require that you're consuming enough protein outside the fasting windows. That's vital. And so, but I remember myself too, like, I guess that just kind of made sense to me right away because I was thinking, okay, I need protein. My body has protein requirements. I'm fasting so much more, so I better eat more. So that just kind of came natural to me. But that's the thing. And I think that when they're looking at a group of people who are intermittent fasting, what's probably happening is nobody's educating them that you have to then compensate and have a higher intake of protein because you're eating less. So your protein per hour, which we're not eating every hour, but you get my protein per meal, needs to go up. It needs to go up a lot because you're eating less often. And so I don't think a lot of people that are preaching fasting are really preaching that. And that's why the title of my book, Fast, Feast, and Flourish. It's not just an aspect of enough protein to counter the fasting windows, but it's also just enough calories, enough nutrients has to counter the fasting windows. And then you skew the ratio towards less with, when you're trying to lose weight versus maintenance, you can feast more, but you fast more into feasting, but you still got to have both. That dichotomy, that relationship, that back and forth, I think is crucial. So anyways, just wanted to cover all that, but let's take a step back and go, okay, how does fasting affect muscle mass? And I want to talk about how fasting, long fasting, flow fasting is actually, hormetically speaking, more beneficial for your ability to build muscle mass. But I just want to finish the part about calories. Any weight loss program is going to cause muscle loss. And the game that we're trying to play, the game that you guys should be playing if you weren't already thinking this as part of your weight loss journey, is how do I skew the ratio? Because I just established that you're going to lose fat, lean muscle tissue, and fat mass. What you want to do for your health and for longevity and for lasting weight loss is you want to improve the ratio where you are losing more fat and you are losing less muscle mass. The better you can improve that ratio, the better your results are going to be long-term for all these different reasons. And so in any calorie deficit, that's going to happen. And so Flow fasting, obviously on a weekly basis, if we zoom out from daily to weekly, that's a massive caloric deficit. So if you do that, and then, with GLP-1 medications, which we're going to talk about, you undereat on those other days, of course, that deficit is so massive. So yes, we have to also have some sort of balance that goes back to the fast, feast, and flourish. And that's how it relates to the calories piece of it. But how do we get the hormones to work in our benefit? There's three main categories. So the first one's growth hormone. And this is awesome. Dr. Funk talks a lot about this. So he actually talks a lot about all these things, but I remember him specifically talking about this one comes to mind. So growth hormone levels dramatically increase with that sustained 36 plus hour range of fasting. And growth hormone is awesome. Growth hormone is, me and you talked a lot about this. It's the fountain of youth and has a ton of benefits, but one of the benefits is increased nitrogen retention. So your body's turning over protein faster. It is meaning it could either build muscle mass if you're doing all the right things for building muscle mass, or it can protect catabolism or the breakdown of muscle mass tissue. So this is why growth hormone peptides are so awesome for both aspects. And so it's a natural way, saves you a lot of money too, because we know how expensive those peptides are, but it will increase growth hormone release. Number two is we have an increase in catecholamines. Now, catecholamines are, for lack of better words, essentially your stress hormones. They're not stress like cortisol. So let me do it more justice. Stress like I'm in a situation where my body is freaking out, it's panicking, and so fight or flight. Okay, so and there's some crossover. There's going to be some cortisol release too as well. But part of what puts your body into this heightened sense is adrenaline, noradrenaline, norepinephrine. And so these fight or flight hormones are actually putting our body into heightened sense. So, and I think it's important to understand why this is happening. So if you look at a tiger, you look at a wolf, it's been days since it's eaten. It wouldn't make sense, evolutionary speaking, if that tiger was just moping around and dragging its feet because it's so tired and so famished, even though it is famished and even though it's starving. No, its body is cranking out and burning more calories. You have an increase in your metabolic rate. Just side note, another awesome perk. But from an evolutionary perspective, the success of that animal would be its ability to successfully hunt and secure a meal, which requires heightened senses. So your body actually increases its metabolic rate, and those catecholamines are protective against muscle mass. They're increasing fatty oxidation, fatty beta oxidation. And so that's awesome. And then finally, probably the most, I would say, potent muscle preserving change from long fasting is the increase in the production of ketone bodies. So ketone bodies are essentially the actual fuel that is being burned when your body is in a deeper state of fat burning. As you start getting into deeper state of fatty beta oxidation, your body starts shifting, and you're still always producing glucose. The brain always needs some glucose, but you have areas of the body that can start to run off glucose, less glucose, and now ketone bodies. So the more fat adapted you are, the more metabolically flexible you are, the more ketone bodies your body produces. And ketone bodies are going to inhibit, slow down that muscle catabolism. So in essence, it's telling your body, hey, I'm in a state where we're running off fat. We're really, really into some deep fat burning. No need to burn the muscle mass because we're running off ketone bodies. That's what ketone bodies can do. And you'll get that from being in a ketogenic diet as well. But flow fasting, talk about hitting you hard and fast, because 48 is really, really intense.
For those out there that are proponents of counting their calories, at least temporarily to see where they're at as a gauge, do you like the idea or philosophy of counting calories in a week at a time versus daily? Because you obviously can't do that when you're fasting for long.
So counting calories in theory would actually give everybody an insanely statistical advantage over their ability to stay healthy and stay out of weight. Just imagine if we had this computer that somehow, maybe not when we're alive, but some sort of computer that analyzes everything we eat and tells us how much we ate. That would be freaking insane.
Neurogut.
Like a neurogut that goes to your smartphone and says, all right, you're at 1,500 calories. Holy shit. Like, that would be super cool. I could actually see that happening at some point. Now, that would be really cool. That would give you an insane statistical advantage, but we don't have that. And so the closest thing we have to that is actually structurally counting calories. But the act itself is so damn frustrating and tedious and boring and cumbersome. And so nobody keeps up with it. Nobody's ever kept up with it. So what I've done is create this protocol. and create this program in a way that allows an individual to not have to count the calories. And when you think about it, you might think, not have to count your calories. How's that possible? Well, we're so used to being in this screwed up disease state that people can easily overeat and gain weight that we forgot or don't realize that human beings and many animal species don't have obesity, because intuitively there's very powerful mechanisms driven by hormones, all governed and controlled by this powerful intelligence in the body that is self-regulating, and it makes you hungry when it needs energy, and it tells you you're full when you're not hungry, or when you have an excess of energy. And you guys can actually think of this, probably never, no one maybe asked you before, but just think about the last time you had a lot of food in one day. You're going to be less hungry the next day in most cases. Now, where that gets broken is when you're insulin resistant, and insulin resistance is the basis of obesity and diabetes and all these poor metabolic issues. And so we've lost that intuitive system of self-regulating how much we're eating and how much we're not, in that energy in versus energy out balance. And so because of that, that's the problem. And so as our whole basis of the program is focusing on insulin resistance, and the more insulin sensitive, which is the opposite of insulin resistance. So as we're healing insulin resistance, as we're becoming more insulin sensitive, we're reducing inflammation from the protocols, and we're teaching people calorie counting consciousness. That's a big one, which essentially is just a lower level of awareness. I have my patients count their calories if they've never done it for a month, and then after that, 2 weeks out of the year, like a recalibration. So if that whole first year, you could look at food since you counted for a month and have, to a certain degree, an ability to estimate how much is on your plate. And to a degree, have a certain ability to estimate a running total. You might be off 500 calories or 800, but that's still significantly more accurate than what you were doing before. And then the cool thing about doing that is you just kind of learn, like the first time, how insanely calorically dense some foods are. Like I remember when I first learned one piece of pizza, because it's just so small, it could be 400. I was like, what? And then you got things like celery that's at 0 or maybe even negative. So you appreciate the density or lack thereof from certain foods as well, which is awesome. But then after that recalibration annually is just nice to be like, okay, my estimation got a little off. I got a little lazy over the past year. So now let me recalibrate it. And now I know, okay, 2000 kind of looks like this. If you're doing 2 meals a day, 3 meals a day, whatever you're doing, you want to have some certainty that last time you calibrated and you counted, you were roughly just kind of guessing and choosing 2000. I think that's always going to be required, because I don't think most people are ever going to get their body back to that super superb optimal state where our ancestors were able to run off of, many animals are able to run off of, which is intuitive hormones controlling us without any consciousness needed.
Yeah, I think of Romans going to war, trekking thousands of miles. I don't think they were eating 6 meals a day during those times.
No, yeah.
To look at us now, it blows me away. And yeah, this gets me to the second hurdle. Someone can accept that prolonged fasting in a cyclical fashion is going to lead to sustained weight gain. Okay. But then to get them to accept that there are actually healthy changes that take place, healing at a cellular level, less inflammation, just everything we know about a lifestyle involving prolonged fasting. So get into some of the mechanisms that happen that actually improve quality of life and our biomarkers.
Yeah. So, we kind of touched on it a little bit, so I'll close the gap on that one. I think the single most important component or benefit of long fasting is the healing of insulin resistance, because I truthfully think insulin resistance is the primary culprit. There's others: inflammation, toxicity, cortisol, hypothyroidism. But I think if I chose one thing to focus on in a room of 100 people, I would have the highest level of success getting those 100 people to achieve lasting weight loss if I focus just on insulin resistance. That's how confident I am that is the primary driver. So low fasting, I mean, think about it. So like insulin resistance and condition where your body's not responding to insulin as well, and so it needs to make more insulin. What led to the resistant situation to begin with? And one big piece of it is lifestyle. When I say lifestyle means doing the things that were driving insulin up to begin with, that were driving blood sugar up, or not doing the things that would have driven blood sugar down, right? And helped you, not elevate those insulin levels to the point where you cause those receptors to become resistant. So this is very powerful. And there's just no other lifestyle intervention that I can think of that is directly going to address insulin resistance more than flow fasting. So I got to say, hands down, the repairing, the healing, the reversal, the regression, whatever the hell you want to call it, the improvement of insulin resistance. Now, the list goes on, and we're not going to be able to cover all of them. I'm just going to cover some of my favorite ones. But inflammation. So you mentioned it earlier with the healing, the cellular autophagy component. Cellular autophagy is such an amazing mechanism and process within the body.
And can you define autophagy? Isn't it like cell cannibalization?
Yes. So autophagy means that automatic consumption, and cellular on a cellular level. So, but what's actually happening? So it's fascinating because I was looking at that other video that I was doing on MOTC, which is a mitochondrial peptide. The mitochondria is this powerhouse part of your cells where you make energy. And there's a certain type of autophagy that happens in the mitochondria called mitophagy. So this is happening all throughout the body. So self cannibalism, eating itself, repairing itself. That's what we're talking about. So, and by the way, this is another sort of a testament to the intelligence of the body. And when anybody says that the body is just this thing that is just happens to be living, and we need medication and surgeries all the time because the body doesn't have any intelligence to make its own decisions, it's kind of insane. But here's an example of some really brilliant decision making by the body. So the main thing that triggers cellular autophagy, yes, it's fasting, but really it's the lack of consumption of amino acids. So amino acids are the basic building blocks of protein. And this is why you can live without carbohydrates. You can't live without protein. You can't live without fat. Mm-hmm. So protein is broken down to amino acids. Your body is in a balanced state of growth and degradation at always. There's always things growing. There's always things breaking down. There's a balance, right? And so after a certain period of time, a certain lack of consumption of amino acids, your body runs out of its stores, which we now know, we talked about, is much longer than 3 hours. But it does have a finite storage. And so when it's out, it triggers this response. Your body knows, this is the intelligence, which tissues in your body are essential. And it knows which ones are not essential. And so what it literally does is it breaks down the non-essential tissues. And to really understand this, humans have trillions of cells in their body. And within each cell, there are organelles. Organelles are kind of like an organ for a human body. You have organs for the cells, so that the guts of the cell are these organelles. And you could also say, if we had a way to quantify it, that the cell's vitality, one cell out of trillions, how optimal that cell is, would be the combination of all the organelles functioning within the cell. You could also say and extrapolate that how optimally a human is functioning would be the average of that number that we just talked about applied to all trillions of cells. But pretty cool. So everything can look great on paper. Labs can look great, but that could be 80%. That could be 75%. That could be, again, we don't have a way to quantify this, but how cool would that be? Who knows what the future is going to bring to us. So we have been at the point of all that is there's always room to improve. And improve means long-term survivability. And so your body, it's doing two things at once. It's just preserving life by taking the broken down parts, recycling them to shuttle the amino acids into the essential nutrients, your brain, your heart, your organ tissue. And then when you eat again, the signal, and this is why we always like to break a long fast with a protein, because the protein would be deliver the amino acids. You get the strong signal which shuttles the nutrients into the cells and starts to repair. So you get a stronger growth response of all those specific areas that were broken down. So you are literally on a cellular level, on a cell level, regrowing and repairing. Something that we're all doing at any given moment, but now we're doing it at an increased rate simply because that's what the body had to do to survive. And so talk about killing two birds with one stone. We're staying alive, we're preserving, and the benefit of that is actually good for us long term. Fasting is not the only way to trigger autophagy, but it's damn powerful stimulus of it for sure.
Mm-hmm. So protects muscle, can heal the body. We know we can actually do it cyclically. The third and final hurdle is pretty much everyone's response. Okay, how the hell can I do that? There's no way in the world I'm going to abstain from eating food for 24 hours. To hell with 48. Let me just try a day first. And I think this really gets into the nuts and bolts of the FLOA Protocol. and why it's having the success that it's having.
Yeah, I think this, before we get into the science-backed medications of peptides, I just want to talk a little bit about the mindset, because I think part of the problem with people hearing 48 is the fact that 48 hours is so radically different than what we've been led to believe and what we thought was normal.
Led to believe, I like that
Yeah.
usage.
Oh my gosh. Like, the as humans, we need to be eating 6 small meals a day. Like, what a load of bullshit. And look, it's when you look at the design of the human body, I mean, it'd be one thing if the fat storage capacity of the human body was very limited. Okay, now we're talking. Now you look at the structure. I know we're just theorizing and looking at mechanisms. This is just, we got to draw. Look, as a society, we're not limited to drawing conclusions that can only be proven through randomized controlled trials. We have to, that's a whole nother pickle, or whatever the hell you want to call it, that we need to unravel at some point. Like, yes, we want randomized controlled trials to draw conclusions for us, but when did we lose our ability to make conclusions prior to even getting to that point? Also, there's going to be things that are never going to get the studies that it needs to be proven. So we have to draw theories and operate a life off of conclusions that are pre-RCTs, but the mentality that we need to eat 6 meals a day just doesn't align with me when you look at the human body and the fact that we have this basically limitless ability to continue to store more and more body fat. And the body fat is a reservoir of energy by definition. So we have this human body that has literally evolved to have this mechanism to store body fat. And yet somehow the experts that be think that humans were never supposed to actually put anything into that reservoir ever. And we should be constantly running off the fuel that we eat. Wait a minute, though, for prior to 10,000 years ago, we didn't have steady states of food supply. So the earliest ancestors were about 3 million years. So 10,000 over 3 million is a small chunk of human history. We didn't have steady states of food supplies. So what the hell did our ancestors do for 3 million minus 10,000? Like this is crazy to me. So it just doesn't make sense at all or add up.
I think our ancestors, they might have fasted.
I think they might have fasted.
Maybe we should fast like our ancestors once in a while.
It's a crazy concept. It's a crazy.
I'll write that down for later.
Yeah, for sure. You might be onto something there. But look, we're just with flow. All we're trying to do is just put our body through some natural stressors against systems that it has, where there's observable benefit when we actually get to put ourselves through that stressors. And the stressors I'm referring to is fatty oxidation, the stressor of coping, the mindset benefit of that. Like there's just so much of it. With all of that being said, I think just talking to an individual, plus talking to my family member, I want them to understand that what we just talked about is, in my opinion, why we've been fed false information. And once you can make sense with that, once you're like, okay, that's kind of crazy. Like my entire life, I've just been in agreement with something completely contradictory to what you're saying. Once I can get comfortable with that, now all of a sudden 48 doesn't seem so crazy anymore. But when you don't, because now you got to believe me that this really hard thing is actually good for you, and that everybody else, it's a big pill to swallow. So I think the mindset piece of getting that down and understanding where I'm coming from, make the pill gets easier to swallow, I think. Then we can get into, okay, once the mindset is there, I get it. I'm mimicking what our ancestors did. I don't know what the fuck these people, that powers that be, told us, something completely different. Okay, fine. I'll get with you, Dr. Jones. But it's still challenging. Oh, it is. I wish mindset alone was going to make it easy. Well, we got these freaking GLP-1 medications, semaglutide, tirzepatide. They are so powerful at suppressing appetite. The appetite, the cravings, the chatter, the food chatter, the main symptom of the obesity disease and really insulin resistance, the primary culprit. GLP-1s reduce that. And so I would say your average person, your average overweight person, okay, the difficulty for them to get into a 48-hour fast is damn near impossible, right? Even now, if they really, really tried and they put their effort towards and they use the supplements, maybe in a couple months, they can get into it with a lot of keto and fasting and slow cell fasting with a lot of keto and over a couple months, because I've done that with patients. But it's just, that's even with the extended amount of time, it takes a lot of mental toughness and wherewithal to get into that. But with GLP-1 medications, even without the next peptide we're going to talk about, which is the fat mobilizing peptides, just with GLP-1s alone, My gosh, I've seen on average about a month of somebody, but the stress level during that month is much less. So it still takes about a month, but the stress level is very doable, very, very doable. So, maybe the first week, if they've never done fasting, they intermittent fast for week number 1. For week number 2, they start doing 24-hour fast. Maybe the first couple of times they don't do a 24. Maybe it takes them that first week to do like an 18 and then a 20. And then the next week they do a 24 and then a 24. And by week 4, now they're surpassing the 24, going to bed, waking up the next day. Now you're waking up at 34-hour territory. And so at that point, maybe 1 or 2 more weeks and bam, you're at 48. So, which usually they do dinner to dinner. So the GLP-1s significantly help shut down that chatter and make it easier. And then the second piece of it is, and it's not just one, but our favorite is called AOD 9604.
Before you do that, we do get a lot of people asking more about GLP-1s and actually conflating AOD with the GLP-1 peptides, right? And when we say GLP-1s, whether it's Ozempic, Mounjaro, tirzepatide, can you just define exactly, so we can clarify for the audience, what they are, the brain and body mechanisms, and then differentiate those with AOD?
Yes. So 6 different common names, 2 different compounds. So semaglutide is the active name or the active ingredient in the pharmaceutical brands. Tirzepatide, same thing, that's the chemical. Semaglutide also goes by 2 pharmaceutical brands, Wegovy and Ozempic. The only difference is what they're FDA approved for, what's on the box, but they're literally the same thing. All 3 of those are semaglutide. With tirzepatide, same thing. You have Mounjaro and Zepbound, FDA indicated for different conditions, diabetes and obesity. All 3 of them are tirzepatide. So we're just talking about 2 different compounds. Semaglutide is your original, not the original GLP-1 because there's earlier actings, but out of the category of when this shit got viral and people are like, holy crap, it was when you didn't have to inject every day and when the results were significantly better. That was Ozempic. We all know that craze. And so, which is still going on. Yeah. So semaglutide is the first really good one. And then tirzepatide is a little better. And sad to say, tirzepatide is probably going to be gone. Compounded tirzepatide will probably be gone, in my guess, probably the next couple of weeks to couple of months, because Eli Lilly has announced that the national shortage is over. Eli Lilly also is suing the FDA. I just found that out yesterday on my live. I mean, this is crazy. Eli Lilly is just like, they're not fucking around. I mean, these guys they mean business. They got to do what they got to do. But this is Eli Lilly's world, I bet, according to the CEO. But anyways, you can clarify all those 6 names in your head, but we're talking about 2 compounds. All those are different than AOD.
Okay. So let's get into AOD now.
Okay. So AOD is a fragment of the human growth hormone. And so AOD 9604 is the complete name. But we talked about human growth hormone earlier. So human growth hormone, what we are talking about now is mobilization of body fat stores. And so AOD will mobilize body fat stores. So will growth hormone. AOD is just a portion of it. It's like taking all the rest of the growth hormone away and just supercharging its ability to mobilize fat stores. That's what AOD does. And so it's stellar. It's really awesome. And when you look at fasting, the 2 main roadblocks are the hunger, which the GLP-1 annihilates. And then the other one is the stress component on the body. Because even if you're not hungry, it's a big stressor for your body, especially if you're trying to jump into 48 really fast. But you're asking your body to feed itself, right? To tap into its stored body fat, meet its own energy demands, which on average is about 2,000 calories for your average person per day. So back to back, that's 4,000 calories that you're asking your body to completely mobilize, feed itself from its own fat stores. Well, again, super fit, healthy, optimized individual, it's like a buffet for your body. That's what fat's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a buffet, an all-you-can-eat reservoir of fuel. Right. That's what it's supposed to be. And that's what it was for our ancestors. So didn't mean the body didn't make them hungry, because the body doesn't want to tap in and lose its buffet. That's a limited buffet, but it is a buffet, and they can keep going. It's a stressor on the body. And I might as well mention, because I know we're almost out of time, any women watching this, the long fasting component might freak you out. And truth be told, yes, as a woman, you need to be aware of certain areas of your time. Guys, you have a 24-hour hormonal cycle. We're super easy to fast. Postmenopausal women can fast like a man. But menopausal women, you have this 28-day cycle. And what I've seen, and this really aligns with Dr. Mindy Pell's, there are certain times during the fasting window, or during that 28-day window, day 13 to 15 during ovulation, day 18 to 28, which is progesterone phase, where the stressor from long fasting, remember, not all stress is bad. Weightlifting is a stress. Your body responds positively to it. It's these times where some women, the stressor of the fasting might be too much to push them over the edge and create not unnecessary issues, but just undesired issues and complications that make it too challenging to complete. Like specifically for the progesterone phase, a lot of women, it'll really provoke the menstrual symptoms because what happens, the stress of fasting, the cortisol spike, because there is a cortisol spike, will literally rob the woman's ability to make the progesterone that they need. So it's really, really interesting when you get into all that. But the reason why I tangented to that is because we were talking about AOD. Mm-hmm. So what does AOD does? What does AOD do? AOD mobilizes body fat. What's the stressor from long fasting? The inability to mobilize body fat. Mm-hmm. Hallelujah, come to rescue AOD. And I think while many will say you should just avoid long fasting because most women that are not postmenopausal are going to have these issues, for us, it's a much lower percentage. And so I look forward to, crossing paths with her at one point because I'd love to share the information because she doesn't focus on peptides or medications from what I can see. Mm-hmm. And she's just focusing on a pure lifestyle. And I've learned a ton from her. She's amazing. But I've had the benefit of being exposed to the medical side and these peptides and medications. I really think the AOD or any growth hormone peptide would work too as well. Sermorelin, tesamorelin, CJC1295, ipamorelin, because of the growth hormone, the mobilization of the body fat. I think that is the secret, the second piece of making flow fasting as easy as possible. Do you need a fat mobilizing peptide with your GLP-1? No. The GLP-1 already takes something that is, I've never quantified this, but now I want to quantify it. So let's just say the difficulty level of doing a flow fast for an obese individual, an insulin resistant individual is 10 out of 10. GLP-1 probably, and this is so hard to do because everyone's obesity is so different. So if I had to take the average level of all obese individuals, it's just obviously really challenging to do, and say that they would have a perceived difficulty of 10 out of 10, GLP-1 alone would probably make it like a 7, 6 to 8. And then AOD takes it from that 6 to 8 to like 3 to 6. It's really awesome. You got to get the GLP-1 first though, because that's the thing that's going to target the insulin resistance. That's the thing that's going to get you eating less. But then you optimize flow with AOD. But the base is always the GLP-1.
So finally, in today's world, we know that the reason that 74% of Americans are overweight or obese, or one of the reasons at least, is because of dietary intake. And not just the diet, but the foods specifically, these foods that are designed to taste great, not cause fullness, and make you want more 24/7. What kind of change in food noise do you realistically see with people who complete, let's say, 3 months of doing flow?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And this is, we can go on and on about this. I know we got to wrap up here in a couple minutes. So again, to try to make it as easy as possible to understand, I really think it's insulin resistance is the primary driver behind the food chatter. GLP-1s will give you, when the clinical dose is reached, an instantaneous reduction in insulin resistance and therefore an instantaneous reduction in food chatter. Well, so does flow. But it takes time. And so what I've noticed is about 3 to 6 months, average person doing flow, where they can say when they get off the GLP-1s on the other side, a significant reduction in food chatter off the meds. That's the key because when you're on, it's hard, right? But when they get off, and we're talking 1 month, 2 month off, they are at a point now where they're stable. Their food chatter is controlled. Or what I'm noticing a lot of people too as well is they won't just go straight from meds to wean off to stable. They do stages. And maybe a lot of these, because I have a lot of people that are in that, but they're microdosing, they're intermittent using, which again, going from 5 milligrams per week, which mind you, maximum dose is 15. Most people are being ramped to 15 on tirzepatide, or if we're talking about semaglutide, 0.5 to 2.4. That's the maximum dose. Most people get ramped up that high and they're stuck. Us, we're barely going to not even halfway, getting people to their goal, helping them wean off, and now they're either completely off and maintaining weight or they're microdosing or intermittent use, which I got to thank Dr. Tina Moore for really kind of bringing that concept to. I learned it from her and shared it with my practitioners. Yeah, for real. And I'm blessed to be in communication with her now and really, really excited for what the future brings, because I truthfully feel like she's the only other person out there right now that's advocating for exactly what I'm trying to advocate for, which is sustainable and holistic approaches towards these medications, using them properly, which unfortunately is just not happening right now.
It sounds like you're losing weight when you're doing this, you're extending your lifespan, you're lowering inflammation, you're preventing disease, and yet something that I feel like should be taught in elementary school is still just an obscure mystery for most people. So,
Yep.
I'm sure a lot of people love this information and we'll keep it going forever if we can.
All right. We'll see you guys later.
Awesome.